I'll try to do this intro quickly because I know that's not what you're here for, there's just some stuff I need to say. This video won't cover /test because it's too big for me to cover in this video right now, but I'll make a video on it soon. Because this is such a big video, it will be pretty fast-paced, so feel free to take breaks or pause the video, and you can use the chapters below for easy navigation. There's a lot of syntax to learn, so stick with me. First is namespaces. Minecraft grabs data it needs from JSON files, which are general data files that can store information for most of the game features like crafting, enchantments, or advancements. It can get the data from these files in-game with their file path, but it's not quite that simple because of data packs. Data packs allow you to add and modify these files separately from the game code, meaning Minecraft has to know where to look for each file. To keep things organized, Minecraft uses namespaces to separate files in one data pack from another. For example, I will create a data pack with the namespace test that has a folder in the recipe folder called folder. I'll create a recipe in this folder called recipe. That means that the path to this folder is test:folder/recipe. We skip the recipe folder since Minecraft already knows that this is a recipe. When writing commands, you can even skip the namespace, which will always default to the Minecraft namespace. I forgot to mention the colon when I first recorded this. Basically, when you write your file path, you put a colon after the namespace, and any following folders are signified with a slash. Next are components. Components are tags that are attached to items to make them behave differently than usual. I'm not going to go over every component here because there are far too many and most of them are pretty complicated, but a good example would be max stack size, which lets you set the max stack size for any item anywhere from 1 to 99. If you would like to see a similar video to this going over every component, I'd be happy to make one, just let me know in the comments. Similarly, there's NBT. NBT, or named binary tags, are a list of tags that entities have that are kind of like stats. They store most of the information about entities like their health, inventory, effects, and more. NBT is formatted with curly brackets, and each entry is separated by a comma. In cases where you're checking for NBT being present, you can also precede the curly brackets with an exclamation mark to check for anything without the NBT. An incredibly useful thing to know is text formatting. In your commands, there are a few places that let you use text formatting instead of plain text. Usually when you have to provide an ID as well as a display name, the display name will support text formatting. To write text with formatting, we write curly brackets, and contained in them we put sets of key value pairs separated by commas like NBT. Text formatting is a bit complicated to explain in this video. If you would like me to make a separate tutorial on this subject, let me know in the comments. Then we need to look at tags. Tags are another feature in both data packs and the base game that you should understand. Tags basically group specific sets of things into one through a hashtag followed by the namespace, a colon, and then the tag name. For example, entity type tags. There are quite a few entity type tags, 46 to be exact, but I'm only going to explain one to give you a general idea, and you can check the wiki for any more. There's an enchantment for tridents in Minecraft called Impaling, which does extra damage to aquatic mobs. How does Minecraft know which mobs are aquatic? Easy. It just checks if the mob you hit is in the aquatic tag. Here's how the aquatic tag is formatted, by the way. It's really simple, just a list of values. With that out of the way, I can explain target selectors. Target selectors are used in many commands to target a group of entities or one specific entity. You can either target a specific player by using their username or UUID, or you can use one of the following selectors. @A targets all players, @E targets all entities including players, @N targets the nearest entity including players, @P targets the nearest player, @R targets a random player, and @S targets the entity that is running the command. Along with target selectors, you can optionally add arguments to further limit your selection. They're contained in square brackets formatted as argument equals value separated by commas, and may be any of the following. Advancements let you check whether or not a player has completed certain advancements. You can do this by adding curly brackets, and then giving the path to an advancement followed by an equals, and then the expected value, either true or false. You can add more by separating them with commas. You can also test for specific criteria being completed by adding more curly brackets and passing each criteria to test with either true or false, again separated by commas. Distance lets you check the distance to an entity in blocks down to the decimal. You can test for a range by separating the two values with two periods. By only providing one number preceded or followed by two periods, you can test for anything greater or lower than the given value. dx, dy, and dz let you test for anything between two positions, starting from the point where the command is executed and going in the direction specified. Game mode lets you test which game mode a player is in. Keep in mind that hardcore is survival mode. You can add an exclamation mark preceding the game mode ID to check for players that are not in that game mode. Level tests for the target's experience level and allows you to use ranges like with distance. Limit lets you set a limit for how many entities to target, which can be used for commands that require you to target one entity. Name lets you test for entities with a specific name. Note that this can be written with or without quotation marks, but they may be required for some names. NBT filters for entities with the specific list of NBT tags. Predicate lets you check for a predicate by providing its path. Predicates are files you can add to data packs that check for conditions that you normally couldn't check for. I'll make a tutorial on them at some point, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Scores let you check for one or more scoreboard scores. It's formatted as scoreboard equals score, surrounded by curly brackets and separated by commas. It also allows you to check for ranges. Sort allows you to change the order in which you target entities. The options you have are arbitrary, furthest, nearest, and random. Tag lets you filter entities by their tags. These are not the same as the tags I mentioned earlier, and we'll get to them later. But as for now, tags are written as plain text and can optionally have an exclamation mark to filter for entities without the specified tag. Team works the same way as tags, but for teams. Again, I'll get to teams later. Type checks for entity types. You can check for a specific entity type, or use an exclamation mark to check for anything that is not the specific type. You can also use a hashtag to use entity type tags. When combining exclamation marks and hashtags, the exclamation mark comes first. X, Y, and Z run the check from the specified coordinates, which is useful for getting the nearest entity to a specified location. X rotation and Y rotation let you target entities that are looking in the specified directions. X and Y rotation both support ranges. Next, when writing commands, it can be useful to be able to read hints. When you're writing commands, you may notice these little tips that appear above the chat bar. I'm not sure what the official name for these are, but I call them hints, and they show you how the command is formatted. First up is plain text. If you ever see plain text, it means write this text as shown, nothing fancy. Next is arguments. Arguments are shown with angle brackets and mean that the appropriate arguments should be given. For example, targets would mean that you should give a target selector, and block means you should write a block ID. You might also see square brackets. Square brackets signify something being optional, and multiple entries in the square brackets separated by bars mean that you can optionally pick one of the options given. If you see the same thing but with round brackets, it means that you must pick one of the options given. An arrow as shown like so indicates that the next part will lead into the shown command. For example, this means that the next part of the command must act as though you were writing a say command. Finally, you can also see triple periods. This signifies that you must add an entirely new command to your current one. I should also mention coordinates. Coordinates are pretty simple with how they work. You have an x, y, and z axis separated by spaces that each correspond to a dimension on a 3D plane centered on 0, 0, 0. It's important to note that Minecraft uses the y dimension for up and down, whereas most software uses the z dimension. There are three ways to format coordinates in commands. The first is to directly input three numbers, which targets a set place in your world. 0, 0, 0 will always be the center. The next method uses these special characters called tildes that are usually located under the escape key along with the backtick. Since they're on top of the key, You have to hold Shift and press the key to type it. These symbols center the respective coordinate on the position the command is executed from. When executed from an entity, this means the bottom center of their hitbox. You can also attach numbers to the end of the tilde to modify it. For example, tilde4 tilde tilde would put the target position 4 blocks east or 4 blocks in the positive x direction from my position. You can mix and match symbols and numbers however you like, they're not incompatible. The last symbol you can use with coordinates is the caret, usually located along with the 6 key. The caret targets the entity's position while also respecting their rotation. The first coordinate being left to right, the second being up and down, and the third being forward and backward. It's extremely useful as it allows you to target things in front of the player. Next is aliases. Aliases are commands under different names that do exactly the same thing. An example of this would be /msg, /tel, and /w. All of them send private messages to another player with the same formatting. Whenever these come up, I'll combine them into one and tell you all of their aliases. You may also occasionally reach the vanilla chat limit. By default, Minecraft's chat has a limit of 256 characters, which is usually fine unless you're trying to write out a long summon command or something. If you hit the limit, you're not out of luck. Command blocks have a limit of 32,500 characters, which you'll probably never bypass, but just in case, data pack functions don't have a limit as far as I know. Finally, we have permission levels. Permission level is a stat ranging from 0 to 4 that determines what each player has access to. Level 0 is the default for any player without cheats, which greatly limits their access to commands. Level 1 allows players to bypass spawn protection, which is an invisible barrier around a world spawn that stops players from interacting with the world. This is used on servers to stop players from griefing lobbies. Level 2 gives players more access to commands, the ability to use command blocks, the ability to grab server-side data with the copy data key, and more. Permission level 2 is the default for command blocks and data packs, although this can be changed on servers through the server.properties file. Level 3 grants access to more powerful server-side commands like /ban, /op, /tick, and /whitelist, as well as a few others. Level 4 is the highest permission level, which grants access to every command, including /publish and /stop. With all of that out of the way, we can finally get into how to use each command, starting with non-cheat commands. First up is help. /help gives you a full list of hints for every command you have access to. You can also optionally add a command to the end, leaving out the / to only view the hints for that command. /list shows a list of every player online. You can optionally add UUIDs to the end to show each player's UUID. /me takes a plain text input and will output a star followed by the player's username and finally the text that was provided. I literally have no idea why this command exists. /msg, /tel, and /w take a target selector followed by a plain text message and privately sends the message to all of the targets. I was debating on whether or not to include /random in the non-cheat section of this video, and I'll explain why in a second. Most of the time, /random does not need cheats, with your two options being roll and value. Roll takes a range of at least 2 and gives you a random value from the range. The only difference between the roll and value options is that roll is public while value is private. With a permission level of 2, you unlock the ability to control sequences, which are random events that happen in the world. The most obvious option that appears is the reset option, which allows you to reset any or all sequences in your world. You can see that if I kill a creeper, it drops 2 gunpowder. If I kill another one, we get the same result, but on the third one, it doesn't drop anything. I can now use the /random reset and choose to reset all sequences or specifically creeper drops. I can now kill 3 more creepers and we get the same result as before. Permission level of 2 also grants the ability to roll values according to these sequences. You can see that if I generate a random number from 0 to 2, I have the option to use the creeper drop sequence. If I do this, we get the same pattern as before. /seed gives you the seed of your world, pretty simple. Although it doesn't require cheats in single player, it requires a permission level of 2 on servers. /teammsg and /tm let you send a private message to every other player on your team. I'll get into making teams later. /trigger lets you add or set your value for enabled trigger scoreboards, which we'll get into in the scoreboard section. You choose the scoreboard, whether to add or set the value, followed by the value to add or set. Next, we have cheat commands, the first of which being advancement. /advancement allows you to grant or revoke advancements from any player. You specify the player with the target selector, and then choose which advancements to grant or revoke. Everything targets every advancement. From grants the targeted advancement, as well as everything that branches from it. Only targets one advancement. Through targets the entire tree of the specified advancement, and until targets the specified advancement and all of its parents. /attribute edits the attributes of an entity. You pass in the entity to target, followed by the attribute to edit. Base allows you to get, reset, or set the base value for the attribute. Get gives you the base value, set sets the base value to the value given, and reset sets the value back to default. Get gives you the total value for this attribute, and modifier allows you to control modifiers. Add takes an ID for the modifier, followed by the value of the modifier, followed by the method to apply the modifier. Add multiplied base multiplies the base by the given value and adds the result to the total. Add multiplied total does the same thing, but with other multipliers included. And add value just adds the given value to the total. Remove takes an ID and removes it, and value get takes a modifier ID and gives you its value. /bossbar manages boss bars through simple commands. Add takes an ID, keep in mind that IDs cannot contain capital letters or spaces, followed by a name, which can. The ID is the way that you reference the boss bar in commands, while the name is what will show up on screen. Get gets the specified values from a boss bar. You provide the boss bar ID, followed by the data you want, either max, players, value, or visible. We'll get to setting these values in a second. List lists all the active boss bars. Remove removes the boss bar. And set lets you set values about your boss bar. Color sets the color of the boss bar to the one selected. Max sets the max value of this boss bar. Name lets you change the visible name of a boss bar. Players lets you assign the boss bar to a player or a group of players. This will make the boss bar visible for those players. Style sets the style of the boss bar. A notched option creates checkpoints that the boss bar updates at, while progress updates smoothly. Value sets the current value for this boss bar. And finally, visible lets you set whether or not to make the boss bar visible to the assigned players. /clear lets you remove the specified items from a player's inventory. Like with many similar commands, you can leave it as it is to target yourself without any arguments. Doing this will remove every item from your inventory. You can also provide a target selector to pick which entities to clear. Getting more specific, you can optionally choose which kind of item to clear, along with how many. Instead of specifying an item, you can use a hashtag to use item tags like boats, which would clear all boats. Finally, you can use a star followed by squared brackets to filter by item components. /clone clones blocks from one location to another. You specify two opposite corners of the build to move, and then the block to move it to. You can even use from and to clone blocks between dimensions. It's important to note that the block that ends up at the destination will always be the block in the most negative corner. That means the most negative X, Y, and Z corner of the cloned area. There are more arguments you can add to the end to be more specific. Filtered only clones the specified block, or blocks with a tag. Masked will not clone air, meaning it won't replace existing blocks unless they overlap. Replace doesn't change anything as far as I'm aware, only used for getting access to the next set of arguments. Strict doesn't cause block updates, and once you've selected one of these options, you get access to 3 more. Force forces the command to clone the blocks even if the source and destination overlap. Move deletes the originally cloned area, and normal doesn't change anything. /damage damages entities. It takes a target selector followed by the amount of damage to do in half hearts. If you want, you can add a damage type to get a specific death message. You can also specify either a location or an entity for the damage to have come from. If you choose for the damage to have been by an entity, you can also pick which entity the damage came from. If that made no sense, yeah, I'm right there with you. They seem to do the same thing, except from overrides by. Yeah, I really got no clue, and the wiki didn't help me either. /data can get or change NBT for block entities, and storage. Storage is a way to hold custom NBT data, which is incredibly useful for commands. Each storage has its own namespace and can hold infinite key value pairs for later use. With get, you specify where to get the data from. Optionally, you can give the specific data you want. Merge lets you set the data for a target by giving a list of the new data. Modify is kind of complicated and I don't really understand it, so I won't cover it now, but maybe someone smarter than me can explain it in the comments. Finally, remove deletes the target data. /datapack gives controls for creating and managing data packs. Create takes a pack name and a pack description and creates a blank data pack in your data packs folder with your criteria. Disable disables the given data pack. You can even disable the vanilla data pack, which breaks most game features and is kinda fun to mess with. Enable enables the given data pack. And list lists all data packs. You can also choose to list only disabled packs with the available argument, or only enabled packs with the enabled argument. /debug is not very useful, even for testing in my opinion. You have three options. Function takes a data pack function and outputs some information about it to a file. Start starts tick profiling, and stop stops tick profiling and gives some information about your game performance during the profiling period. /default game mode sets the default game mode for the world to the one given. /dialog shows or hides the specified dialog for the specified targets. Show shows the dialog, and clear hides it. Clear doesn't take a dialog input as there can only ever be one open at a time. /difficulty sets the world difficulty to the one given. /effect lets you give or clear specific effects to entities. Clear takes a target as well as optionally the effect to clear. If none is provided, it clears all effects from the target. Give again takes a target as well as the effect to apply, followed by optionally the amount of time to apply it in seconds, or infinite to make the effect last until the target dies or clears the effect. If no time is given, the effect defaults to 30 seconds. You can also optionally add the level of the effect to apply from 1 to 255. And finally, you may optionally add whether or not to hide the particles given with the effect with either true or false. This will default to false. /enchant takes a target followed by the enchantment to apply and attempts to apply that effect to the item in their main hand. You can optionally include the level of this effect to apply, which is limited to the normal limits of the enchantment. /execute is probably the most important command in the game, but at the same time is also the longest, so stick with me. /execute is a way to run other commands with certain conditions or arguments. Since /execute can run other commands, it can be stacked, although you don't even need more execute commands to do this. /execute lets you stack conditions and arguments by default as far as you want, at least until you hit the command limit, so let's get into each argument. Align lets you align the location the command is executed from to the grid. Just input each axis you want to snap and that's it. Anchored lets you snap the view to either the eyes or the feet. The way this works is kinda weird to understand, but as far as I can tell, it affects the caret symbols and coordinates, which usually come from the feet. As takes a target and simulates that entity executing the command. At takes a target and simulates running the command from their position. Facing simulates running the command facing a specific direction. This works with coordinates or an entity if you specify that you want to face an entity. If makes a condition check from one of the following conditions. Biome checks if the biome at the specific location matches the given biome. Block checks if the block at the specified location matches the given block. Blocks checks if the blocks from one location match the blocks at another, works the same way as /clone. Data makes a data check, like /data get, but making a comparison to the given data. Dimension passes if the dimension the command is executed from matches the one given. Entity checks if the given entity is loaded. Function runs the given datapack function and fails if the function ever returns a failure. I'll explain this with the /return command later. Items passes if the item in the target position matches the one given. Loaded checks if the given position is loaded. Predicate checks if the given predicate passes. Score checks if the target score from the given scoreboard meets a condition. Those are less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, or matches, which checks for a specific value. This works with ranges. Or equals, which compares the current score to another one that must also be given. And finally, stopwatch, which checks for the given stopwatch being in the given range. Stopwatches will come later. That's it for conditions. Next is in. In simulates running the command from the given dimension. On executes as an entity in relation to the one executing the command. Attacker targets the last entity that attacked the source within the past 5 seconds. Controller targets the entity that is controlling the source, like a player controlling a horse. Leasher targets the entity that is holding the source on a leash. Owner targets the creator of the source. Passengers target the entity riding the source. Target targets the last interaction entity the source interacted with. I think it interacts with other entities in some way, but I can't seem to figure it out. Finally, vehicle targets the entity the source is riding. Position simulates running the command from the specified location. This can also be an entity with the as argument, or on top of a height map with the over argument. Motion blocking excludes any block that doesn't have a hitbox. Motion blocking no leaves is the same, but excludes leaves as well. Ocean floor excludes all liquids, and world surface doesn't exclude anything. Rotated simulates running the command from the specified rotation, either an X and a Y, or the same rotation as an entity with the as argument. Run is the way that you execute a command after all of your conditions and arguments. When adding a command to the run argument, you do not use a slash. Store allows you to store either the result or success of the following command in the specified NBT. Success stores either a 0 or a 1 depending on the success of the command, and result stores the output value of the command. Summon summons an entity and sets it as the target for the command. And finally, unless works the same way as if, but passes when the condition fails. /experience or /XP lets you get or modify experience levels for specific players. Add takes a target, the amount to add, and whether to add the amount to levels or points. Query takes a target and whether to query levels or points. This will output the value in chat. And finally, set works the same way as add, but sets the value instead of adding to it. Keep in mind that when setting points, you cannot go over the maximum points for the current level. /fetch profile lets you fetch some data about a specific player. The ID argument uses a UUID, and the name argument uses a username. It will output a message in chat that looks something like this with the following buttons. Copy component. When pressed, this will copy the profile item component, which can be used to get ahead of that player. Give item will prompt you to run a command that will directly give you that player's head. Summon mannequin will prompt you to run a command that will spawn a mannequin entity that copies the player's profile. And copy followed by the player's head will copy the profile in BT that can be applied to a mannequin. /fill fills a specified region with a given block. Takes 2 coordinates followed by the block to fill the region with. Optionally, you can add square brackets here to specify properties about that block. This is enough to fill the area and most of the time is all you need. But if you want more customization, there are a few options you can add. Destroy makes any block that was replaced with the command drop as an item. Hollow only fills the outer layer and replaces everything inside with air. Keep only replaces air blocks. Outline works the same way as hollow, but does not replace the inside blocks with air. Replace only replaces the specified block or block tag. This can also check for block states. If no block or block tag is given, it behaves as normal. And finally, strict does not cause block updates. /fill biome fills a region with the specified biome. Optionally, you can choose to replace only a specified biome or biome tag with the replace argument. /force load lets you set or query regions in your world to stay loaded no matter what. Add takes up to 2 sets of coordinates and forces every chunk the region passes through to stay loaded. Query takes a coordinate and checks if the chunk at that location is force loaded. Remove works the same way as add but stops the chunks from being force loaded. You can also put the all argument to unload every force loaded chunk. /function runs the specified data pack function. You can also pass in data when required by the function, either by using an array of data or by passing in data from a source using the with argument. In functions, these are called macros and can be utilized by functions by replacing a part of the function with a $sign followed by round brackets that contain the ID of the data to be passed in. Any line that contains a macro must also put a $sign at the beginning of the line so Minecraft doesn't read it as an error. For example, I made this function which takes a username and message as macros. In-game, when I run the function, I'll pass these arguments like so. This gives an output where it appears a player with our given username has sent our set message in chat. /game mode sets the game mode of the targets to the one given. You pass the game mode to set the targets to as plain text, followed by who to target. /game rule sets the value of game rules to the one given. I'm not going to cover every game rule again, tell me if you would like me to in the comments, but I'll go over 2 to give you an idea. You pass the game rule you want to change the value of, so in this case, that's advanced time. Advanced time is a game rule that determines whether or not time changes in your world. Since there are only 2 options, that makes this a Boolean game rule, meaning you have to pass either true or false. Next is one of the most popular game rules, random tick speed. Random tick speed changes the speed at which random events occur in your game. Since random tick speed is a numerical game rule, we have to give it a number from 0 to the integer limit, which is 2,147,483,647. Now, unfortunately, my computer couldn't seem to handle this game speed, and most game functions broke when I tried this, so let's use a more manageable 1,000. You can see that at this speed, most random events happen way faster than they should, so I'm going to set it back to the default value of 3. /give gives an item to a target. You specify the target, then the item to give them. You can also optionally add an amount to give them, or use square brackets to add components, or remove them with an exclamation mark. /item lets you modify items in any inventory. Modify applies a specific modifier to an item. It takes an inventory to source from, either a block entity or an entity, followed by which one, and finally the slot. Then you must provide the modifier to apply. Item modifiers can be sourced from a data pack or written out in the command. I'm not going to cover item modifiers in this video, although I might in the future. For now, to generate them, go to this link, which will be in the description, and you can generate a modifier there. You can copy the output with the copy button, but for commands, I would make sure to turn on inline code first to make the output one line. Finally, replace takes an inventory to source from, again, either a block entity or an entity, followed by which one, and finally the slot. You can either replace from another inventory or with a specific item as shown. /JFR allows you to either start or stop JFR profiling, which gets output as a JFR file in the debug folder of your Minecraft instance. /kick shows up in single player for some reason, even without enabling LAN. /kick takes a target and optionally a message that will be shown to the target who gets kicked. Keep in mind that you can't kick the owner of a LAN world. /kill is one of the more simple commands in the game. It takes targets and kills them. That's it. /locate lets you scan for and teleport to specific biomes, structures, or points of interest. It will find the nearest of what you search for to the source of the command, and will output its coordinates as a button you can press to teleport to it. If none are found within a reasonable distance, the command fails. Biome takes a biome or biome tag. POI takes a point of interest or a POI tag. These are things like villager types, nether portals, lodestones, and more. Structure takes a structure tag. /loot takes the loot from an inventory or loot table and does something with it. There are a few loot sources we need to cover. Fish simulates fishing something from the given location and tool. Kill simulates killing a target. Loot pulls straight from a loot table. And mine simulates mining the block at the given location with the given tool. Now we will cover the loot actions. Give takes a target to give the item to. Insert takes a block entity to insert the item in. Replace replaces the item given from the given entity or block entity. And spawn summons an item entity with the loot at the given location. /particle creates a particle effect with a few arguments. It takes a particle ID to display. Some particles need parameters set to work properly, followed by optionally the location to display them. You can also optionally add a delta, which signifies the size of a cube to randomly spawn the particles in, centered on the location. If you include a delta, you must include a speed and count. Speed seems to be a multiplier for delta, although I'm not entirely sure, while count is the amount of particles to spawn. After all of that, you can optionally specify whether to set the particles to force or display normally. Force means that the server forces all clients to load the particle even on lower particle settings. /place is a way to spawn structures anywhere in your world. Feature takes a feature to place as well as optionally the location to place it. If none is given, it is placed at the source of the command. Features are set builds that don't exactly feel like structures. Things like trees and desert wells, and actually a lot of things I didn't expect, like end islands. Jigsaw takes the jigsaw pool to place, followed by the starting jigsaw block and maximum depth. Optionally, you can add a location to spawn it at. Structures take a structure to spawn and an optional location. Finally, templates let you spawn individual parts of a structure. /playSound takes a sound ID and everything else is optional. You can pick which kind of sound to play it as, which determines which volume the sound uses. Then you can pick the targets to play the sound to. Then you can pick a location for the sound source. Then you can pick a volume for the sound. Then you can change the pitch from 0 to 1, 1 being normal. And finally, you can set a minimum volume for the sound. /publish is only available in single player as it opens the world to LAN. You can optionally add a boolean for whether or not to allow commands, followed by the default game mode for new players, followed by the port. Recipe lets you give or take recipes away from players. You specify a target, followed by the recipe to give or take. You can also use a star to select everything. Note that giving or taking a recipe does not change whether it is craftable or not, only whether or not it appears in the recipe book. /reload reloads all data packs. /return is a command that is used mostly for functions. Fail stops the function where it is and reports a failure, and run reports a success and runs the given command. /ride lets you make an entity mount or dismount another entity. It takes an input target as the mounter and whether to mount them or dismount them. Dismount makes them stop riding any entity they're riding, and mount takes a target of who to ride. Some entities cannot be ridden. /rotate takes a target to rotate, followed by the rotation to set them to. This uses coordinate formatting. You can also use the facing argument to make it work like /execute facing, letting you target a block or an entity with the entity argument. /say reports a message to chat. It takes a plaintext message and outputs the source's name in square brackets, followed by the message. /schedule lets you schedule functions to run after a specified delay. Function schedules a function to be run. You must provide the function to schedule, followed by the amount of time to wait, shown by a number followed by a letter that either signifies days, seconds, or ticks. Optionally, if you've already scheduled this function, you can add either append or replace to tell the game how to handle it. Append schedules the new function alongside the old one, while replace replaces the old schedule. And clear clears the schedule for the given function. /scoreboard lets you manage scoreboards and scores. Objectives let you manage scoreboards. Add creates a new scoreboard. It takes an ID and a criteria, which is what the scoreboard counts. You can use dummy if you want it to be manual. Optionally, you can add a display name, which is the name that shows up on screen. List outputs all scoreboards. Modify lets you edit the settings of a scoreboard. You give the scoreboard's ID, followed by the setting to change. Display auto update is a Boolean value that controls whether or not scoreboards update constantly. Display name lets you change the display name of the scoreboard. Number format lets you edit style options for the scoreboard. Blank doesn't render the number. Fixed takes a text input and only displays that text. And styled lets you change the style of the number. Finally, render type lets you choose whether to render the number as an integer or hearts in the player list. Remove deletes the given scoreboard. Set display lets you choose where to render the scoreboard for players. Players let you manage individual scores within scoreboards. Add takes a target, a scoreboard ID, and an integer value and adds that amount to the target's total value in the given scoreboard. Display lets you change the name and number format for individual players. Enable enables the given trigger scoreboard for the given player. Trigger is a scoreboard criteria that lets players use the /trigger command to interact with scoreboards, meaning you can kind of make custom commands for players without cheats. You can only use /trigger on scoreboards that are enabled for you, and they get disabled upon triggering them. Get fetches the score of the given player for the given objective. List lists all the scores of the given player. Operation applies certain operations to a player's score. It takes a target, followed by a scoreboard ID, followed by the operation to apply, followed by another target, followed by another scoreboard ID. It calculates the operation with the two scores and sets the first score to the output. Percentage equals is a modulus. This means that the first score counts up and loops back to 0 whenever it hits the second score. Star equals multiplies the two scores. Plus equals adds the two scores. Minus equals subtracts the two scores. Slash equals divides the two scores, and rounds down if the output is a decimal. Left angle bracket means minimum. If score 1 is greater than score 2, score 1 is set to score 2. Equals sets score 1 to score 2. Right angle bracket is the opposite of left angle bracket. Finally, right angle bracket followed by a left angle bracket swaps the two scores. Remove is the opposite of add. Reset sets the given player's score to the default for the given scoreboard type. And set sets the given player's score in the given scoreboard to the given value. /set block works very similarly to /fill, but it only targets one block. You give the coordinates of the block to set, followed by the block to set it to. You can optionally use square brackets to change block states. After that, you have the same options as fill: destroy, keep, replace, and strict. /setWorldSpawn sets the default spawn point of the world to the source's position. Optionally, you can add a location to use instead and even set a rotation. /spawnPoint lets you move the spawn point for any specific player. It uses the same syntax as setWorldSpawn, but you have to specify the player first. /spectate lets you force a player in spectator mode to spectate a specific entity. You provide the spectator to target, followed by the entity to spectate. /spread players spreads the targeted entities randomly within the given space. You specify the center of the area to spread them in, and this only takes two coordinates, x and z, followed by the minimum spread distance and then the max. These use a square radius meaning the distance from the center, and square meaning it calculates as a square, not a circle. Next, you must specify whether or not to group teams, either true or false. If set to true, entities on the same team will be teleported to the same location. Finally, we choose which entities to target. You can see as I run this a few times that our armor stands get moved around randomly within our square. Finally, we have the under argument. The reason that we don't specify a y coordinate is because it always puts the entities on the top block at their chosen location. The under argument lets you set a max height for these entities to teleport to. /stop sound stops any sounds that are playing to the targets. You specify your targets and optionally which kind of sound to stop, and even which sound specifically if you want to. /stopwatch lets you create and manage stopwatches. Stopwatches are not affected by tick speed. Create takes an ID and creates a stopwatch. Query takes an ID and reports how long the stopwatch has been running. Remove takes an ID and removes that stopwatch. And restart takes an ID and restarts the stopwatch. /summon summons an entity. You specify which entity to summon, and it will summon that entity at the source's location. You can optionally specify a location to spawn the entity at, and even NBT data with curly brackets. Although it isn't fully out yet, I figure I'll cover /swing to future-proof this video for a few months. /swing makes an entity swing their fist. You specify which entity to target, followed by whether to swing their main hand or their offhand. /tag lets you manage custom tags for entities. Tag takes a target, followed by what to do with their tags. Add lets you add a tag to this entity. All you have to do is provide a name for the tag. List lists all of the entity's tags. And remove is the opposite of add. /team is a really cool command that lets you manage teams. Add creates a new team. It works the same way as scoreboards and boss bars by taking a team ID and then the visible name. Empty takes a team ID and removes all entities from that team. Join takes a team ID followed by a target and adds them to that team. Leave takes a target and removes them from all teams. It would be more useful if it let you choose the team to remove them from, but oh well. List lists all teams. You can optionally add a team ID to the end to list all entities on that team. Modify lets you modify team settings. It takes a team ID followed by the setting to change, followed by its new value. Collision rule changes how entities are pushed when colliding with other entities. Always is the default. Never removes entity collisions. Push other teams removes entity collisions with entities on your team. And push own team removes entity collisions with entities that aren't on your team. Color changes the name tag color of entities on the team. Death message visibility changes whether or not to show death messages in chat for this team. It has the same options as collision rule. Display name lets you change the display name of a team. Friendly fire lets you choose whether or not players on the same team can damage each other, either true or false. Name tag visibility chooses whether or not to display name tags for this team, has the same options as collision rule. Prefix lets you add or change the text to show in front of a player's name tag. See friendly invisibles lets you choose whether or not players on the same team can see each other when invisible, either true or false. And suffix is the same as prefix, but at the end of the name. Finally, remove lets you remove a team. /teleport as well as /TP teleports an entity to a location or another entity. You provide a location or a target, and it will teleport you to it. If you want to teleport another entity, you'll give them as a target, and then either another target or a location. You can optionally add a rotation to the end as shown. /telraw lets you send formatted text in chat. You choose which targets to send it to, followed by your message either as plain text or formatted. /tick lets you control the tick speed of your game. Freeze freezes all game components that rely on game ticks. Query reports some info about the tick speed. Rate lets you set the tick rate per second from 1 to 10,000. Sprint lets you temporarily speed up the game. You can choose how long to sprint using in-game time, either days, ticks, or seconds, or you can stop sprinting with the stop argument. Step steps forward a tick. Optionally, you can choose how far to step, either seconds or ticks, and stop stepping with the stop argument. Finally, unfreeze makes the game run at the rate speed. /time lets you modify the in-game time. Add lets you add time to the clock, either days, seconds, or ticks. Query lets you check the time. Day tells you what day it is, daytime tells you what the time is, and game time tells you how long the world has existed for. Finally, set lets you set the time, either day, noon, night, midnight, or the time value. /title lets you display text on another player's screen. It takes targets to display to, and then the title to display. Action bar shows the given text above the HUD. Clear clears any queued subtitles and hides any titles that are being shown. Reset clears all subtitles and resets times. Subtitle lets you set a subtitle that will be shown beneath the main title whenever the next main title is shown. Times lets you set the time to display each title with fade in time, hold time, and fade out time. Each of these values defaults to ticks, but can be set to either ticks, seconds, or days for some reason. Title takes a text input and displays it on the screen along with any queued subtitles. /version displays some useful information about the current game version, most importantly, the resource pack and data pack formats. You can also access this data without cheats by pressing F3 and V. /waypoint lets you manage waypoints in the locator bar. List lists all players that are currently on the locator bar, And modify lets you modify the color of a player's waypoint as well as its style. Reset resets the style to default, and set lets you set its style from a resource pack. /weather lets you control the weather similarly to /time. You can set the weather to either clear, rain, or thunder. Optionally, you can add an amount of time to set the weather for before returning to what it was before, either ticks, seconds, or days. And finally, /world border lets you manage the world border. World borders cannot exceed a 59,999,968 block diameter, although I believe this can be changed on servers. Any diameter that leads to the world border ending up between blocks will let the player walk fully into that block but not past it. Add lets you add an amount to the world border's diameter, and you can use negative numbers to subtract. Optionally, you can set the amount of time to adjust it for. While it's moving, it will turn red when subtracting and green when adding. Center lets you choose the location to center the world border on. Damage lets you change how much damage is applied when passing through the world border. Amount lets you choose how much damage per block to do, and buffer lets you change how far you can go before taking damage. Get gives you the current diameter for the world border. Set lets you set the diameter for the world border. Optionally, you can add the amount of time to change it for. And warning lets you adjust the warning feedback the world border gives you. Distance lets you set the distance to start showing the warning at, and I can't seem to figure out what time does. Server-side commands are usually a lot more simple and intuitive than some other commands, so this section won't take long. First up is ban. /ban works the same way as /kick. You provide a player, and it bans them from playing on the server. You can optionally add a message to display when they try and rejoin. /ban IP works the same way as /ban, but it bans a player's IP address so they can't join on another account. /ban list shows a list of every player who's banned. /deop lets you revoke a player's operator status. /op lets you grant a player operator status. /pardon lets you unban a player. /pardon IP lets you unban an IP address. /perf lets you debug the performance of your server over 10 seconds. Start starts performance profiling, and stop stops performance profiling if you need to stop it ahead of time. /save all saves the server to the disk. /save off disables autosaves. /save on enables autosaves. /set idle timeout lets you set the amount of time in minutes that a player has to be idle on the server before being kicked. /stop stops the server. /transfer lets you transfer players to another server. It takes a server IP, the port to try to connect to, and the players to transfer. And finally, /whitelist lets you manage the server's whitelist. Add lets you add players to the whitelist. List lists all whitelisted players. Off disables the whitelist. On enables the whitelist. Reload reloads the whitelist. And remove lets you remove players from the whitelist. There are 8 debug commands in Minecraft, but you probably haven't heard of any of them. This is because to gain access to these commands, you have to add some startup arguments to your game. To do this, go to the Installations tab, hover over the version you want to add them to, and click the 3 dots. That should bring up a drop-down menu with an option that says Edit. When you click that, it'll bring you to this page. Go down to the More Options drop-down and open it. This will reveal 2 inputs, one of them being JVM arguments. Now scroll to the end of this list and add these 3 arguments to the end. DMC Debug Enabled allows you to enable debug properties. DMC Debug Dev Commands enables 7 of the debug commands. And DMC Debug Chase command enables the /chase command. If you're not using the official Minecraft launcher, you can look up where to specify these properties. With that set up, we can get into using each command. First up is /chase. /chase lets you sync your movements from one client to another. Follow connects your client to another server as a follower. You provide the server IP to connect to and the port to connect on. If you're playing single player, you can use localhost. Lead sets up your client as a leader. By default, this uses port 10,000, but can be set by providing the IP to lead and then the port to lead on. Finally, stop stops you from leading or following. Once you have a leader and a follower, every time the leader moves, it will teleport the follower to the same position. /debug config is the only server-only debug command, and it allows you to send a player back to the configuration phase. Config reconfigures a target. I can't show what happens when it succeeds because my server seems to not like me using this command, but after 20 seconds you can press the disconnect button and everything is fine. Dialog displays a dialog to a configuring player. It takes a UUID and the dialog to show. Unconfig takes a UUID and skips configuration for that player. /debug mob spawning, I think, is supposed to check whether or not a specific mob type can spawn at a location, but it doesn't seem to work for me. You give it the type of creature to test, followed by the location to test it at. /debug path checks whether or not a mob can pathfind to a location. You must execute the command as the mob you want to test it on, and choose which block to pathfind to. It will report in chat if it was a success. You can see if I run it on this pig that it can successfully pathfind to my location, but if I tower up 2 blocks it can't. /raid lets you manage raids. Start takes an omen level and starts a raid at that level at the nearest village. Check checks if there is a raid at the nearest village. Glow makes all raiders glow. Set omen lets you set a raid's omen level. Sound seems like there's supposed to be some way to make it play the sound of a raid starting, but I couldn't figure it out. Spawn leader spawns a raid captain. And finally, stop stops any ongoing raids. /server pack is supposed to let you manage server-side resource packs, but I can't get it to work. As far as I can understand, pop is supposed to remove a resource pack, and push is supposed to add one. /spawn armor trims lets you preview every combination of armor trim, material, and armor type. You can specify which armor trim to preview, or use the lag my game option to spawn all of them. /warden spawn tracker lets you change your warden spawning state. Clear resets your spawn state, and set lets you set your state from 0 to 4. So there you have it, every command that is currently accessible in Minecraft. I don't usually make videos this big, so I seriously hope that if you watch the whole thing you learn something new. Please consider leaving a like and comment to give me a little boost with the algorithm, and join my Discord server with the link in the description if you have any questions or want to chat with other Minecraft pack creators. Thank you for supporting me, and I hope you have an amazing 2026.